native SQL, right? I just shared the video in the group, so just see the things. So today we'll see these two things. One is annotations. What is annotation? File, the XML file is required every time because to interact, like have an interaction between the application and the database, we need this particular XML thing. But without XML also, we can have a communication by using these annotations. Okay? Is it clear what is annotation? Hello? Is it audible?
Actually, there is a breakdown in the voice. Can you please repeat that statement again?
Yeah, I was saying about the annotation part which is required when instead of using the XML file, we can use this annotation part. Okay? So, annotation is nothing but a replacement of XML file, we can say. Okay? Now, is that audible properly?
Yes.
Right. So yesterday we have seen the Angular, the native SQL, right? I'll just show you the output as it was a breakdown. Once you see the output, then we can carry forward this concept. So what is the advantage of this annotations? We don't have to create the mapping file. And annotations are used to provide the metadata. What is metadata? Information about the data. Okay? So for every particular scenario, we have an annotation there. Now I'll just execute the previous class. Like this was an example for the previous thing. So let's go. I'll continue with the annotation part. So again, it take time. So we'll start with this annotation. So the one point we have seen, Hibernate annotations. Instead of the mapping file, you can say. Okay, and here what are the annotations we have and what we are trying to do. We need the jar files, all the jar files we have to add, and what are the common things for this is nothing but Hibernate hyphen commons hyphen annotations.jar. This is the first jar file, ejb3 persistence dot jar file, and Hibernate hyphen annotations dot jar file. So these three jar files are mandatory for the Hibernate class. Okay, and we create the same persistent class which we created in the previous topic. Let's say employee is there, right? that instead of the Hibernate mapping file, we'll see this annotations part. Okay. So for the class, we need an annotation known as @entity. So if you want to represent, we have few annotations. In that, the first thing will be the @entity, and what this annotation marks the class as an entity. Class as an entity. Okay. So next thing will be table entity, because we need to have the table, right? So what this table is used for? Annotation is a table name where the data is an entity and is to be persisted. Okay. So if you are not using this table annotation, the same name as entity will be considered as a table name also by default. So what is the table name? It's similar to like the tag, the class tag we write, right? And then we have this table which is mapped with the class. Okay. And here class is nothing but the entity and table is nothing but the table which is related to the XML file, Hibernate mapping file you can say. Okay. So next thing, table annotation specifies the table name where data of the class is to be stored. That's a table annotation. And @ID is there. So what is @ID is doing? This annotation marks the identifier for the primary. So we take the identifiers, right? And the same thing we use here for the annotation. @ID is used as annotation. Okay? Is it clear, everyone? See, we have a mapping file, right? Is it audible? Hello?
Yeah, it's audible.
Yeah, what I'm saying is we have a Hibernate mapping file, right? This name is the class, right? This is replaced with @entity. So this is table name. This table is represented by @table. And the same ID is represented by @ID. Simple thing. And for this column, we use the column. That's the only thing which differentiates with the mapping file and the entity file, you can say. Okay. So that will be the Hibernate annotation part. And what is the last one we have? @file. What is annotation? Annotation which is used to represent the columns, the data base table. Okay. So these are the 4 annotations we use for this particular part. So I just want to have the same employee, but instead of employee, I just want to create Hibernate annotation, employee annotation you can say. It's a Java project, employee Hibernate annotation. So we have the next thing and just say finish. The same code I'll copy paste, just instead of the HBM file, we write the thing. What is it? Directly the annotations will use. Okay. So what is it class we have? I'll copy the same thing. Right click new. Inside this new we have a particular class. And that class is nothing but employee annotation. And the class example is nothing but form dot annotation you can say. Okay. So in this employee annotation we'll create the variables and methods. There is nothing but the getter and setter, right? So if you see here employee.java, we have few of this getter and setter methods. The same thing I am copying here and keeping inside the employee annotation. Okay, and we have the same configuration file, Hibernate configuration file. We're not changing anything. Okay, so that's a class where we have to map. So which class we are mapping? Here we are mapping the package. Like package must be required, right? So what is the package? Com dot hibernate. Hibernate dot annotation. Right? So the same thing, the package name you have to specify in place of the mapping class name. Is it clear? Instead of the XML file, the mapping class will be there. So that was a mapping resource. Now I map the class. Which class I'm mapping? I'm directly mapping the com dot hibernate dot annotation is a particular package and employee annotation, that is a particular thing, mapping class. So instead of the mapping resource, we are using a mapping class inside the Hibernate configuration file. Okay, and now what we have to add in this particular entity, like for this employee annotation, we use this entity, right, for the class. So at the rate entity we have used, and now it's giving error because we need to import that particular thing. What do you have to import? Import java is dot persistence dot entity. That is the second thing we need to import. What is it? At the rate entity so we need this persistence API, right? So first thing, right click, build path. What do you have to use a build path for configuring the Java files. Add library, user library. In this user library, select the Hibernate, and after that, say finish. Okay, click on OK now. And previously we didn't have the annotation. Now I'll just write that particular class. Now the Java x dot persistence API. So here we have to use the Java x dot persistence entity. Along with this entity, we need to specify the table. @table, which particular table name we are using. Okay. So EMP83 was a table, right? Previously we have used to map the same EMP83 API we are using here. Okay. And the next thing will be the @ID for this private ID. So again we have this Java XR persistence. Okay. Next, @ID is another particular API annotation. So this annotation is from the part. So these are the entity, table name, and the particular ID which is used to map for the class. And now we are writing a mapping class inside the Hibernate configuration file. So we have already written that mapping file. After that mapping file, just directly execute the program. That's it. So we need this particular. Just saving this now. Yeah, there is no error. So I need to create one more class. What's the one more class? Employee store. New class. Employee annotation store. Finish. The same employee store I'm going to write here inside this. Okay, we just change the store. I didn't change it. So write the same employee store. Copy the thing. Here it's employee annotation object. Okay, where is that employee store? Employee annotation. Yeah, spelling was there. So now this is the class we are using to store the values inside the EMP83, you can say. So run SQL command line, connecting with the database and connecting with the database system by manager. And I need to describe this EMP83. I'll delete the records, delete from EMP83. 3 rows were there, I've deleted the 3 things. Now I want to insert a new record here from the employee annotation. So that employee store I'm clicking. Instead of employee store, you can say employee annotation. Just directly save this part. Just I'll remove this thing which you have copied. Now run this application. So we are getting some exception. The annotation configuration instance is required for the mapping class, right? So what is it annotation configuration file we are using? Employee annotation store. The employee annotation store we have seen. So we need to create a particular configuration file. What you are using mapping class. So I have written configuration mapping class we have written, right? Okay. Is it inside the Hibernate configuration or there? I have written a mapping class. The com dot Hibernate dot annotation. The spelling is correct. And employee annotation. That's it. So no need of closing this mapping or you just have to save this thing. Could not pass the Hibernate dot completion file. Mapping must be followed by the slash. Leave the slash. The mapping class what you have created has some problem. The package name and the class is mandatory. After the package name and class, we need to get that file. Com dot Hibernate dot mapping file. We need to add it inside the property. So same thing we have added, and the mapping class is there. So we have to create an object of what? Employee annotation is there. So what is the exception we are getting when we are having this exception? It's saying an annotation configuration. Okay. So we didn't create any annotation configuration. So without this creation, we are trying to configure the build session. Okay. So first we'll try to create an object of annotation configuration. So employee annotation is there, and here based on the employee annotation configuration, we can call the configure method. So import annotation configuration. Annotation. Right. So as it was asking for annotation configuration, I created an annotation configuration object. Now we have to see instance is required to use a mapping class. So by using that mapping class, we can create or not. Save this thing, run this particular part. Select star from the record has been inserted, right? So the thing previously I got the exception because I was using a normal configuration and I was not using any annotation configuration, right? To overcome that, we are using the annotation configuration now. So what is the thing we used to do with the normal Hibernate file? The same thing we are doing it with the annotation also. Just we need to change only one thing in the Hibernate configuration file. Instead of mapping the source, we need to map the class, which class you are mapping with, and instead of the annotation like configuration object, we need to create an annotation configuration. These two must be changed. And in the persistence class or the POJO class, plain old object, we have to specify the entity and the table name, and after the table name, we need to specify the ID. At the rate ID is nothing but the primary key of this column. And the next things will be like directly mapped to the database. Okay. And here in the employee annotation, only the single step which is changing is annotation configuration. Is it clear how to use the annotations inside the Hibernate and what is the advantage of annotations? Annotations avoid the XML file. Okay, Hibernate mapping file will be avoided, you can say. Understood, everyone?
Yeah.
Any doubts?
No.
Shall I continue?
Yes, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Raj, Naveen, is it clear? Annotation means what? Ramesh.
Yes.
Yes, Rohit.
Yeah. Koti, can you understand that?
Yeah.
So the next thing will be the named query inside the Hibernate. So this is one part of the Hibernate, like annotation part 3. Now we have to see, previously I've seen the native SQL, right? So now we'll see the named query inside the annotation, like inside the Hibernate. Okay? Here, why this mechanism is required, like named query. What a named query indicates, that we have to see. Okay? So native SQL we have seen that we write queries directly, the SQL queries, right? And if this native SQL queries we are executing, like if you want to execute the same query for multiple times and in more than one particular program or application, then we can use the named queries. So by using this named query, we have to configure the query configuration, and that name will be used whenever the query is required to execute. Okay, simple thing. What we have done, we have written the query inside the code itself, right? Like say in the employee Hibernate or the employee store. What is that yesterday's thing? It's not employee. Yeah, student Hibernate, right? So in student Hibernate, if you have seen, we have written the native SQL. And inside the native SQL, you can see we have written the query directly, like select star from student 25. Suppose the same select star from student 25, I am using 10 times in 10 different particular programs in this application itself. So for the 10 times, I need to write it repeated number of times. Means I am writing the same query again and again, right? So instead of writing the query again and again, we can use this named query where this query will be kept inside a Hibernate mapping file. So we need to configure the query by putting some name for it. And in the client application, we need to use a method known as get named query, which is given by the session interface. So by using this get named query, we can get the particular objects and we can get these things in the form of a list. Like here already we have seen this, right? The same method you can use to get that particular queries. Okay. So if you want to create a named query, then we need to use query element in the Hibernate mapping file. That's the most important thing. The query configuration occurs properly, or the query configuration means the query is written only once in a mapping file by giving a particular configure query, and the same particular configure query can be used in repeated number of things, repeated number of client applications. That is the advantage of named query, you can say. Okay, is it clear?
Yeah.
So how we write the named query means simple thing. Angular base will be there in the Hibernate mapping file, you can say. So this thing I'm writing inside the Hibernate mapping file. So we write a query. Inside the query we are having the name attribute, and the name attribute is nothing but the query name. Anything you can write. Okay. And by using the query name, we can specify the query field. So in the Hibernate mapping file, we write this tag every time. Okay. Now, in the application, how to get this particular query by using the get named query method. So by using the get named query method, we can set a particular parameter, the value, and based on the parameter value, we can retrieve the values from the database. That is the advantage of the named query thing. And in the Hibernate mapping file, whenever you specify the class, inside that particular class, we specify the name and the table column, right? And now, how to write the query? With the given query is nothing but SQL query. So you'll use SQL query tag. And based on the SQL query, you can write the select star from EMP or select star from student. Okay, so these things will be used directly in this particular file. Clear? Understood what I'm trying to say here. I'm writing a Pojo class. For the Pojo class, we need to write a named query, and for that named query, we'll pass the elements. Where passing the element is nothing but the value by using which we can retrieve the size and generate that particular ID. Okay, so already we have a table, right? Still now we have created 4 things. One is employee hibernate annotation, one is employee hibernate, the third thing is product hibernate, and the student hibernate, right? So in the product hibernate, now I want to use the named query, which can be specified in the product.hbm file, and which can be configured in the product operation, right? So apart from these files, I'm removing the 3 US files directly. So I'm removing this particular part, and we need to use the get named query in the sessions. We can see, right? So now first thing what will be there, I need to use the mapping file. In the mapping file I need to write the query. Okay, so directly the query name and the query type. In the product.html we have a class. In the class attribute we specify the property, and after the class we can use a particular tag known as query. So in this tag I'll specify select star from, what was that configuration file we have used, or the IP product, right? Product we can say. That's it. Okay, so just we have written the query here, and I'm not keeping any semicolon and everything. So just the query has been written. Now for this query we need to write the particular query name. So what this query name can be called? So directly the name. So what that query is to retrieve product. So I'll just specify that name as retrieve. So by using this retrieve word, we can access the file. The Hibernate configuration file doesn't change here, or the Pojo class. Pojo class will be the same thing. We don't have to add anything else. Just the only tag we add inside the mapping file, that too is for the query, which will be used in repeated applications simultaneously. Okay, so here we need to configure this in the product operation part. First, we configure the XML file, create a session factory, and we open a session. Then we need to write this query. So what is happening? This product get, I'm just commenting it here till this particular commit. Now after the session object has been created, I'm writing a particular query qr equals to the session dot, what is that object, you can say get named query string, and what is that string, you can say retrieve, which we have written inside the particular class. Save this part, we need to import this query. So what is this query is used from Hibernate itself. So Hibernate, org.hibernate thing we have to retrieve. Right. So we have retrieved it, right? Now based on this, when you call the qr dot list, we'll get the data. Same thing as yesterday. So data will be retrieved, and what is this data is of type list. So what list we are using here? Directly you can say java.util.list, and by using this list we can try to print the value. How to print this value? Simple thing, data.list iterator, and the list iterator is nothing but having a return type as list iterator. So this is also the import java.util iterator itself. Okay. Now after this we need to call a method. What is that method? While li dot has next, right? So li dot next. What you are retrieving here? I am trying to retrieve an object table or the product type of value. Directly also you can print, or I am casting it to object to class, casting it to product, right? So system dot out dot println. We can use the method p dot get product name. Right. So what you have to print here? P dot get product price. These two things I am retrieving and just printing it as it is. Now I need to just print this value. Okay. So directly I will say session dot close. Okay. So and factory dot close also you can say. We are closing the object. That's it. Now run this particular operation. Product operation, which is used to retrieve errors.
Product review gets name.
Come again?
I think retrieve is not the name mentioned there.
What is it I mentioned in product.html? I mentioned the retrieve spelling is wrong.
Correct.
Retrieve. Sure. I'll use a simple name then. Directly the named query I'm doing. Right? You don't specify any particular semicolon also. The table name is correct. Product is the same table name we have. So let's start from product we are taking. Yeah, we have the value actually 1025 and the mobile and the price. Okay, do we need to specify the ID here, or directly we can send the query, right? Now we'll just see this once. Product operation directly run this file. Yeah, it's having some exceptions here. When you are configuring the object actually. So we are getting the named query. Okay, the syntax of the named query, query and the name. Product. Yeah, you can search directly actually. Named query tag in Hibernate mapping file. There are one more thing on SQL query also. If you want, you can try with this. Class cache. Shall I start with it? Okay, we are getting the object actually. Cannot be cast to product actually. Now we are getting the object actually. Instead of printing this from the product, we can't cast it. Directly I want to print this values now. What is it? Li dot next. Save this thing. So we're just printing the values. Object values are required actually. But we are not able to class cache it, right? We have converted the thing into object and we have given the query file, right? The show thing is getting retrieved here and the product name, the product ID. Okay, we are specifying the name and the column. So just we can do the same thing. Instead of using this generator class, name is this particular thing. Column, what is column you can say? ID itself, CLO and dollar. And the same thing, we have product underscore name, product underscore price. So those are the columns again we specify here, right? Column equals to product underscore name. Column equals to product underscore price. Now if you just try to run this thing, we are unable to cast it to product actually. What is the reason? Can't directly store with the product here? It's getting executed, but object to product type itself. But eventually we need the product itself, right? Then I'm just running this part again. Now it's saying again that product need to go. But it's converting to okay, fine. This, we have to set query or directly the query also. But when we are giving the query, we're having a configuration XML, right? It's showing the error in the named query. So it must be SQL query itself, actually. It's printing the value, but the value is printed in the form of objects. There's an object thing that we are getting. That object values cannot be classified again. Fine, I'll just check out with this value. In the next class, I'll just show you the output of this thing. Okay? So till that time, practice the annotation and the named query. So here we are having the naming. Okay, we need to write this separate thing. Fine, I'll just check it out and let you know in the next class. Ramesh, try to upload the class video in the group, okay?
Okay.